You're watching Rebuild Plus.
Okay, well, to get a good paint job, you have to make sure that all your gear, all your equipment is running well. When we're talking about gear and equipment, I have compressors, I have paint guns, and I have all the associated accessories that go with the paint guns. Pretty simple when you think about it, but there's some small nuances that really change the quality of your job. So in the past, for years and years, I have spent, a lot of time, a lot of trial and error, getting the best results I can from this gear to paint cabinetry, to finish furniture, small vehicle stuff like motorbike tanks. That's what I cut my teeth on, and basically it's not changed too much over the last few years because I've got it where I really have tuned everything in. I've got the right gear for the right job. Now for me, I keep all the gear in one zone. All of my pneumatic tools, which include some hand-me-down sanders and grinders and cut-off tools. I've got my Venturi pumps and filters. I've got my vacuum bagging stuff. It all lives up here, easily accessible, and the way my brain box works is I just want to know where it is and grab it when I need it. And then down here I've got paint guns, hoses, and all the accessories I need. One thing that I have learned is to make my compressors a little more portable. I used to keep my big compressor here, the 60-gallon, in one spot all the time, but I would move it every few months and it would drive me crazy having to drag it. So since then, I've put it on casters so it can move around when I need it. It's pretty stable, and I can lock the casters out when I'm using it, and then usually I take a ratchet strap and strap it to something, but I can just move it wherever I need in the shop. That's great. And then the 20-gallon comes with wheels. Now, when I'm looking at all my gear, I need to set up for spraying the slick sand, a paint sprayer. I'm going to use the big compressor because I want as much air volume as I can. Now, I've learned over the years that you can do some pretty wonderful things with the small guy, but you need the right spray gun to really assist you with the smaller 20-gallon and lower compressors. I had to learn the hard way that if you use an HVLP or high volume, low pressure gun with a small compressor, it just runs all the time. Not only is it driving you insane, but it's just terrible for the motor. And I burnt my first 20-gallon compressor out real quick. And then I learned, you could buy an LVLP gun, low volume, low pressure. Now, they look very similar, but both have internals that allow you to do low volume, low pressure, and this one's better suited for high volume, low pressure. Both give you a great finish when teamed up and working with the right nozzle, but I want to get nostalgic just for 1 second because I can't look at my gear without seeing this guy. This is a Siphon feed gun from the late 50s, early 60s, and it was my grandpa's. And he is pretty much the reason that I feel as competent as I do with my projects. I watched him for years pull off some of the most awesome, renovations, restorations. He loved to paint and he loved to tile, and he used this gun to make some really, really cool things. And he was a fireman, and he would love to paint vehicles of his friends, his co-workers. He also did so many vehicles for my aunt, uncle, my mom. I remember a 1981 Honda Civic that he painted under a carport, and it just looked amazing. And he did it all with this gun. So I inherited this, and I don't use it, but as a momentum and as something to look at, and I look at it and I realize, wow, you can do some pretty awesome stuff with simple equipment. Right next to it is its more modern version. I really don't think these have changed much in the last 50 years, but it's a siphon gun, and if you don't know, siphon gun has a canister at the bottom that you can continually refill. It's like a straw that picks up your product or your paint and then sprays it out. Now the good thing with the siphon gun is it's quite easy to fill and quick to use, and I use these and this one. I think this is a newer one of mine, but I've used these to blast off a lot of paint when I need to do a big surface area paint. I really don't care about the finish because I'm either going to sand it back. I use these a lot for moldings when I need to blast off a bunch of moldings before I do a house renovation. These are great for that. But up here we're getting into more modern-ish. I'm still probably a decade back from what is the most modern, but we have that LVLP and HVLP, and I've put these little nipples on it to help me. Well, they came with a new kind of gravity feed cup. They both come standard with this reusable cup that gets screwed onto the top of the gun, and you just fill it with product, and then once you're done you wash this out. But more modern, you get these, for lack of better words, nipples that come with cups. So these cups have a rigid component to it that are reusable, and then they have these liners. Okay, and this liner you can just dispose of when you're done, which makes cleanup really easy. But you can also line up a bunch of them with whatever your paint is and have it ready to go. But you slip it into the rigid cup, you put a lid on it, and these are kind of neat because they press and lock in, but they also have a built-in filter. So you do usually, I do, filter my paint out with before I even pour it into the cups. But then there's a secondary filter just to make sure you don't get any big lumps or stuff in there. But then you take that guy, and that compresses on to this nipple and twists and locks, and there you go. Now you have a gravity feed system instead of the siphon system, and it allows you to spray with ease. Now I take this and I combine it, where are you, with this inline. It's got a quick connect. It's got an inline pressure gauge, so I can adjust the pressure not only at the tank, but I can adjust it here. I've got an inline filter as my secondary filter because my big compressor here has a air filter and a moisture medium filter, so that, I don't know if you have a big compressor, but you usually accumulate some sort of moisture, even though you try to purge it from the bottom whenever you start a project. There's always going to be a little bit of moisture in there. So this takes the compressed air, runs it through the first filter, then through this medium, which then ends up sucking some of the moisture out of it. You catch it with this inline filter, and you're usually pretty good. I mean, most of 99% of the time. If you've ever been painting a job, especially with your finish coats, and then you get a little moisture and it spits out these little droplets of water and it ruins your finish, it's so aggravating. The setup isn't that costly. Well, really the only thing that you have to think about is if you want a bigger compressor like this, the 60-gallon, which is just a game changer for my, quality of work that I've done, you need a 240-volt power supply with a 30-amp breaker at the box. This little guy, which I used for years, only needs 110. But once you get this, you never go back. So other than that, I think each of these are just under $100, maybe 150 bucks is the most I've ever paid for a gun. Yeah, that's the system I have, and it's done me well so far. Of course, I have a smaller gun with a 0.8 head for little jobs when I need to do any little touch-ups. You could put gel coat with a little bit of a bigger nozzle there, or you could just do little paint touch-ups with that guy there. But yeah, that's what I'm going to use, and I just want to set it up, test it, make sure everything's good to go, and we're going to get spraying. We'll start with the prep. So we did that slick stand coat, and I think it turned out really well. It filled in all the pinholes, and I've sanded that back with 180 grit and then followed that up with 320. And when I followed up the 320, I did kind of a multi-pass, and it's turned into this really nicely sanded finish. I've degreased everything and let that dry. So the surface is ready to go for paint. So that is prep, ready to go. Now, temperature. Outside today, it is cold. I don't know where you are, but it is 26 right now outside, which is like -3, depending where you're from. And inside, I've had the shower curtain paint booth pulled and the heaters on for the better part of the day. And so I got up this morning at 5. It is 9:30 right now, so they've been kicking and going on for about 4 hours. And we're at about 65 for the ambient room temperature, but I need the surface. So 65 is about 18. I'd love it to get 70 plus. I think that is pretty much the minimum you want for when you're spraying anything with paint. And we're like 62 on the surface, and that's really important to get your surface temperature up. Paint, pretty equal, 62. 62 is like 18, 19. So we're at the bare minimum on that, so we got to keep cranking this up. That's temperature. Paint wise, I have all my paint cups ready to go. So we're using the 3M paint cups with the built-in filters. That's going to be with the HVLP setup with a 1.7 tip, ready to go. Compressors ready to go. But I've got 9 cups set out. Why 9? Because when I was doing the slick sand stage, I found that it took 2 cups to get one side, or basically half the transom all the way to the bow front done. So I want to do 2 rounds or 2 coats of paint this morning. So that's going to be 8 cups. So I need to set that up. And why the 9th cup? Well, I'm going to try something a little different, something I haven't before. I follow Ollie Paints and the Candyman. Those guys are my kind of go-to paint gurus. And they do the step where the very first coat they do, a kind of a dusting coat. Think of it as like a spray adhesive. You're using the paint, but you're just lightly dusting it, so you're kind of setting back a little farther, and you're going over your whole area with just a very light dust coat, and that will adhere to the surface, and you let it kick off for about 15 minutes, and it kind of acts like an adhesive where the following coats, so our other 2 coats, will kind of adhere to that and should reduce the sagging, if there is sagging. So that's kind of the theory behind it, and I'm going to give it a shot. Why not? So paint check, temperature check. So in terms of, I got my respirator ready to go. I'm going to use the 3M Versa, the big dog. I got the HEPA filter ready to go. What else? Yeah, I'm getting excited. So I think in these situations, it's best just to get her done. Yeah, should be done by noon. Knock on wood. Okay, let's do it. First coat is done. So after letting that dust coat kick off and tack up, I think it did exactly what I was hoping for. It allowed this first coat to really lay on without
I can't even really see a sag. So really happy about that. I'm gonna let it kind of do its thing for about 20 minutes. I'm gonna go get a bite of food, and then I'm gonna come back and we'll spray the second coat. All right, just had some food. Now I'm back. We're gonna start spraying again. So yeah, let's get to it.
Well, well, it's the next day, and you know, you can tell by the smile on my face, it turned out better than I could expect. I'm very happy. I've turned the heaters off in here just so I could talk to you. Outside is cold. It's like 26. So -3-ish wherever you're from. And in here, I've been able to maintain a decent heat to allow it to dry. I mean, it's not dry, but it's dry to the touch. It's not tacky at all. I mean, I don't know if you could tell, but you could see the gloss that has been retained. And this is not wet. This is just the gloss. A little less gloss on the sides, but I think maybe that was my application. I was able to go really wet here, but on the sides, I kind of dusted it, which is fine, because what I care about the most is that it's got a nice coverage, it's uniform, and there's hardly none orange peeling, and I've been around the whole boat. You know, I think we could probably get away with just like a compound buff and, you know, and then a final buff. I don't even think we might have to wet sand it at all. I mean, normally you take it and you wet sand it with 1,000, 2,000. You could go up as high as you want. And then you'd compound and then you'd buff it. But no, pretty impressed. Now, I know the slick sand has worked and done its job because in and around the utility boxes and the two inner wings of the Euro transom we built, I didn't put the slick sand just for whatever reason. And that has been where it has reacted a little bit with the top coat. And you get a little bit more orange peeling, cottage cheese in those areas. So I'm definitely gonna have to sand that out, maybe even respray it a little bit, a little touch up. But this will detail out so well. You know, and I've been so apprehensive up to this point. Thank you for following and sticking with me. I know that I doubted myself, but I would say that if you really, you know, set yourself up with like the good respirator, the decent equipment, the bigger compressor, take the time to make that paint booth, you know, with whatever you need to make it out of. Like the shower curtain tarp paint booth has worked amazing. This morning I pulled it all back and I took the time to vacuum, but all of the airborne paint stayed off of the tools and just fell in a nice little ring as I shake it out and just right down onto the floor, and it was dry enough that I could vacuum it up. And you could see how much paint was there. So that was a really smart idea, you know, thank you. And then I would say, you know, we didn't talk about it much, but a box filter or a HEPA filter, some sort of negative pressure pulling everything out, because I ended up going through 2 filter screens, the 24 by 24 filter screens, and they were as blue as this when I took them out. So you could just imagine if that was staying in the little small space here. But that combined with some fans and yeah, you know, I think you can do it. I was very, very apprehensive and I was doubting myself for so long, but if you were here and you saw the job we did, I think you'd be impressed. Yeah, I am. So wow, that's such a weight off my shoulders now. I think we let this just dry. I'm not even gonna think about detailing it or touching it or sanding it for weeks, if not a month. I just want it to harden up. So we're gonna turn these heaters back on. I have these little monitors. I have 4 of them that I bought, and they come with a base unit, and that base unit's up at the house, so I can monitor from up there what the temperature is here. We're gonna try to keep it at 70 or above if I can, just to let this cook for the better part of the next few days. But like I said, I'm not gonna touch it for a month, which is perfect, because that gives me the next month to be able to work on the outboards, not only get them running, get them mounted, get all that steering and the electrical. You know, we're going to start working on the systems and the rigging next, and yeah, start having fun again. Not that this isn't fun, but I could totally understand where everybody on YouTube who has a boat project and gets to this point are just so happy, because when it turns out as well as this, it's just such a good feeling. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for sticking with me. Like I said, we're going to start shifting gears to the outboards, and I can't wait to get that. Well, I've already started, but I can't wait to start putting videos out for you. So yeah, thanks again, and I'll see you next time at Rebuild Projects.